Hi guys, welcome back to Chats with Jax. I am so sorry for being gone. I've had a lot of things going on with me. If you've seen one of my vlogs, I mentioned one of the craziest things is that Penny had identity theft on her. We filed our taxes and then the following week it got rejected because it was like the most nonchalant call. They give us a call and they're like, hey, we can't go through your taxes because it looks like she was already claimed on somebody else's taxes. So would you like to file without her? I'm like, no, someone committed fraud on my daughter. Well, she has no other parents. Like what the heck? Nothing we can do. There's nothing we can do about that. But I just feel so bad because I've neglected my podcast that I freaking look forward to every week, but something always comes up and I was doing really good on the schedule. So it's okay, we'll get back into it. But I wanted to have my integrity. I said I was gonna have a podcast once a week. And I wanna make sure that I have my podcast once a week, right? Well, on this episode, we are gonna be talking about what I would do differently as a second time mom. So guys, I don't even know how to explain what I felt as a first time mom, okay? Of course, I need to give you context. I'm a who, what, when, where, why, and how type of person. First of all, I've always been around kids my whole life, okay? I love them. I was babysitting, every Mexican is babysitting at 9 years old, okay? I loved kids, but I never thought oh yeah, I want kids. It's not that I knew one day it would come. I thought it would be later in life, I don't know, mid-30s. But it wasn't until I became a gymnastics coach that I truly just fell in love with kids. I realized that I had patience, to sit down and to teach them. Obviously, I was teaching 1 hour classes, but they were little kids and I just had so much fun with them. It was a really, really good time. So that's when I discovered that I liked kids, and that was in 2014. However, being a gymnastics coach and being a mother is just two different things, okay? With Penny, I did have postpartum depression and anxiety, and motherhood for me as a first-time mom just hit me. I swear it felt like I got hit like a bus every single day from the moment that we got out of the hospital. No, from the moment that I gave birth. It's not funny, but I'm looking back, right? I've been a mom for 2 years and 8 months, and I'm just dang girl, you finally got out of the trenches, and I'll be back soon, but it's okay. So when I say that motherhood just hit me like a ton of bricks, let me just explain some things to you guys. When we were in the hospital, me and Kenny, right? I'm delivering. I truly don't know what we expected. We were so naive to things. I swear, I was 27, Kenny was 30, I think, or 31. And we were just so naive. I remember me and Kenny, when people would tell me all the time, oh, are you gonna breastfeed or are you gonna formula feed? And I'd be like, I'm gonna breastfeed. It's just gonna be so easy. I'm just gonna give the baby the boob at any time. And in theory, yeah, you're just giving the baby the boob, and you don't have to make the baby a bottle. But that shit wore me out, okay? Breastfeeding was another thing, but I'll get into that topic soon. But I bring up that we were just so naive that it felt like two teenagers that had a home, a car, and a career, having kids, not knowing. I remember being in the hospital and we didn't know how to swaddle. And there was this nurse who was so good at swaddling, and Penny only stopped crying when she got swaddled by her. So we would call that nurse in all the time. I'm so sorry, but can you just swaddle her again? And she did it so fast that we didn't understand what was happening. We didn't know how to swaddle. So that's my advice. Learn how to swaddle. Kenny and I remember Penny crying, in the hospital while we were there. We had to stay a couple days longer because she had jaundice. And I remember she'd cry, and me and Kenny would look at each other is anybody gonna come help us? What are they doing? They're just allowing us to have a kid, and then nobody's gonna come save us? It was just, I don't know, it was such a funny feeling. But I remember coming home from the hospital, and I felt good. I took a shower, and I felt good, and I wasn't in a cloud yet. I remember we went in on Sunday, and I got home on a Friday. I remember making freaking chorizo and papa burritos. So Kenny's were you hungry? Let me make some burritos for us, I don't think it hit me. I think I had this adrenaline still. I was running off adrenaline. And I swear the next day, oh my God, it just hit me. And the following month, it just was such a cloudy experience. From breastfeeding to not knowing how to pump, not being familiar with swaddling, knowing what baby's cues are, right? Like I just truly felt like a first time mom, which I was, but it just felt like so young to me. Well, I mentioned that I had postpartum depression and anxiety. I didn't realize that until Penny's first pediatrician's appointment. Her pediatrician, I guess you're supposed to answer some questions, and I answered them, you know, as truthfully as I could. And I scored like a little bit above average, I think. I don't know what the average number was. Like, I think if you scored like more than 5, then you're like on the cusp of, you know, having depression or anxiety. And I didn't know what any of this was. And I remember Kenny could not go to that appointment with me because we had Penny in the middle of like football season. So he didn't go to that appointment with me. But I remember her pediatrician asking me if everything is okay. But what I found out early on is like when people came to visit, everyone's like, how's the baby? How's the baby? Like, but nobody ever asks. Well, nobody ever asked me like, how's the mom? Like, how's the mom doing? Like, is she doing okay? So I was already used to this answer. So when the pediatrician asked me, how's everything going? And I said, good. Penelope's doing great. I was so stoic. I didn't even recognize myself now, like looking back. And she said, no, I want to know how everything is with you. And I'm at her pediatrician's office and I was so shocked. I said, what? She's like, yeah, how are you doing? Like, are you okay mentally? Like, is everything okay? Like, how are you feeling? Like, and nobody asked me that. And I broke down crying. And I was like, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if I don't know if she's eating enough, you know, from breastfeeding. I don't know how to pump. I can't get any sleep because which I feel when you are like breastfeeding, you become the primary parent. Because especially when you're not pumping, like how's anybody supposed to help you when you don't have any milk supply, right? I felt super like stressed, you know? I felt super stressed during that conversation, and I just immediately cried. And she said, is there a reason why you don't want to formula feed? And I said, like, what? Like formula feed? Like, no, I can't formula feed. Like, I have the ability to breastfeed right now. And you know, I just need to like get through this. Like, I just need to get through it. And she was like, it's okay if you formula feed. Like, it's not a bad thing. Like, your baby's gonna be okay. And I was like, no, like I can't do that. Like, I need to breastfeed, you know? The baby needs these nutrients and these, you know, it's all natural. She said, okay, listen, you don't have to use it on her, but if you ever feel that you're just so exhausted and you you don't know what to do and you're feeling stressed out, I just want you to take the formula. Just take it so that way you can have it as a backup. Because I had no formula in my house. Like, there was nothing, you know? I was the only source of food for her. And I was like, okay, that's nice of you. Like, okay, like maybe formula feeding isn't bad, you know? And let me just back up a little bit. So when it came to breastfeeding, I was also very naive, okay? I remember, I didn't know why people would choose to formula feed over breastfeeding. I didn't. I'm telling you, like, I was very, very naive to everything. I didn't know. I was like, breastfeeding's free. Breastfeeding is free. And then I found out how much formula is, like, per can. I'm like, that sounds so expensive. You know what I mean? Why would anybody want to pay for that? I remember specifically asking a question on Instagram. I have a question. I'm curious. Why would people choose to formula feed over breastfeeding? And a lot of people messaged me. They said, well, there's such things as baby has a tongue tie, or you get mastitis, or clogged ducts, or I couldn't produce any milk. And some people were just like, it just wasn't in my favor to do so. Like, I found it a lot easier to just formula feed. And I was like, oh, okay, like, okay, that makes sense. Like, I didn't realize that there was an option. Like, I thought, like, I truly did not understand. And everyone around me pretty much breastfed. breastfeeding was the thing to do. I mean, it's a part of like, I guess like heavily into my culture, you know, everyone did it. A lot of people encouraged me to do it, right? Like, yeah, it's the best, like you need to do it, like you got to get through it. It's going to be hard at first, but you got to do it. And I don't think anybody who encouraged me had bad intentions. However, I did feel pressure. I felt pressure. So even thinking about taking that formula from the pediatrician, like I hid it in my pantry. I didn't want anybody to know that I had the formula. I didn't understand, like I felt the pressure around me and it made me sick. I'm not saying that's why I had postpartum depression or anxiety, but being that sole provider of food for your baby was mentally challenging for me in the first couple months, especially during football season. So I remember Kenny, I feel so bad too because we're just both first-time parents together, and he would do his best to help me. He would call his dad over and he'd be like, Dad, can you go please help Jackie? Like, she's so tired, you know, can you go watch the baby for her? And his dad is amazing, you know, he's like, yeah, I can go do that. But then when my father-in-law would come, he'd be like, okay, I said, I'm gonna go to sleep. He's like, okay, and just in case she's hungry, what do I feed her? And I was like, I don't know. I don't have any milk, you know, because I don't know how to pump. Like I wasn't pumping. I felt like everything was a full-time job, being a mom, breastfeeding and pumping and doing all this, you know. So that was hard because every time I would have somebody come over or like, you know, Kenny would be off and he would be able to help me, he would wake me up and he would be like, babe, I'm so sorry, but the baby's crying. You know, he'd be waking me up. And I would be like, what? I was so angry when he would do that. I'd be so mad. And I didn't have any milk for the baby. He's like, there's no milk. Like, I know you tried pumping. I would try pumping like once every 3 days, you know? And he's like, I'm so sorry, but she's crying. And he would feel so bad trying to wake me up. But, you know, we had this like agreement that I was gonna breastfeed, and we thought it was gonna be so easy that I would just turn around and give the baby milk at whatever time or day or night, you know? And it just wasn't that easy for me. Like, and don't get me wrong, I didn't have mastitis. I didn't have clogged ducts. Like, my breasts were so full of milk that they would gush out at any time or day. So the supply was there. It never went away. I am very blessed that I made it to a year of breastfeeding, and it got easier for me. What I would do differently as a second-time mom would be not to put so much pressure on myself. I love breastfeeding. I think it's super cool. Like I think it's literally so amazing the way our bodies can work as women, and that literally, like, we can grow a baby. Like it's such an amazing freaking thing. Like, you can grow a baby inside of you, and then you can literally feed your baby off of what you produce. Like, there's milk coming out of your body. Like, I think like women are so incredible, and it's an amazing thing to me. I will breastfeed. I want to try my best, right? However, I will not be upset with myself if I need to supplement with formula. So I'm actually gonna even buy formula and have it here. And I had a conversation with Kenny too about that. And I just said, like, I know in both of our families, you know, we've had people around us who breastfed, and maybe it wasn't like easy for them, but it's always like, you need to breastfeed, you need to breastfeed. And it's never like, you never hear like about not the bad things, but I don't know, it's hard. I'm not saying that there's not hard times with breastfeeding, but I don't know. I just kind of learned that the stigma of breastfeeding is that, like, even if you don't want to breastfeed because you don't want to, it doesn't mean anything. Like, to me, it doesn't. There are doctors, there are scientists, there are like the smartest people in the world who were formula fed, you know? I love it because it's like a natural thing. Number one, what I'm gonna be doing differently is not putting so much pressure on myself or Kenny. We're gonna have 2 babies at the same time. We are having twins. One of my friends who is a twin mom said that she tried to have the babies on the same feeding schedule. So she would have one baby on the boob, one boob, and then she would formula feed the other. Her husband would formula feed the other, and then they would switch. Then the baby would get the other boob, and then they would get a bottle. I think that's really cool, And I don't feel ashamed saying that out loud. I don't feel bad about that either. I think that that's gonna work for us, for Kenny and I. And we're the ones like doing this together, and we are doing the best that we can. So, yep, I will not feel guilty for formula feeding. Secondly, I want to try and pump. Not religiously where I become an exclusive pumper. Nothing is wrong with that. I don't mind that, but because being an exclusive pumper also means that you're around the clock on your boobs. You're waking up at 2 a.m. and it's the same thing, right? But like having the machine and on you and all the time, I don't know if I want to pump like that, but I do want to pump to have like a stash. Like I want to be good about that. Like I like at least every day try, you know what I mean? To try to get 2 bags so I can have 1 and 1, I think that's like a really good idea too. But of course, we can say all the things that we want to do differently, and you just never know with your babies. Like I never know what's gonna happen. So I'm just gonna do the best that I can. And if that's what I can do, I want to. And a third thing that I would do differently. So this is hard because I don't know what you would call this. Penny is not on a sleep schedule. She's never been on a sleep schedule. And it worked for our lifestyle because we only had 1 child. And I mean, it was really nice that Penny could just fall asleep anywhere. Like I thought that was really cool. Like she didn't need to be in her room. I don't care if I left during nap time, like she was gonna sleep. However, I do think that sleep is like such an important thing for kids. And I do want to be more mindful that a schedule is not bad, but I don't also want to be strict. And I'm not saying that like you shouldn't have a sleep schedule, because I mean, all of my friends do really well and their kids are great. Like they're great sleepers. They sleep throughout the night. My kid is not the best sleeper, she's not the best, but it got better after I stopped breastfeeding. I swear she slept through the night after I stopped breastfeeding. That was crazy in itself. Sleep schedules and sleep training. Penny is not slept trained, okay? She did the bassinet for 5 months until she started rolling over, and I did not know how to transition to a crib. I gave up too soon. I would put her in her crib for nap time, but during the night, she would be just so attached to me, and I think I just was so sleep deprived too that I felt like I never slept with Penny. I never slept. Like I felt like I was so exhausted. And I also think it was due to breastfeeding because she was so dependent on the boob. I don't know. But there's a lot of people who breastfeed and have sleep schedules. So maybe that's just like my experience. Like I was just like lazy and like, not lazy, but I was just so exhausted, dude. I was just so tired. I think maybe trying to sleep train the boys would be a good idea, like at least where they can sleep in a playpen, because they're gonna be in our room for the first year. We do have a 3-bedroom house, but I do want that 3rd bedroom to stay as a guest room for the first year, and then we'll see where we're at when the boys are 1, and I can always transition that. Yeah, I don't think it would be a bad idea to try to sleep train the kids. I just could not do the crying. I did not know how to sit there and let them cry for, I know it wasn't a long time, but there's the Ferber method, there's I don't know what other methods there are, but there's so many methods. I felt like that's what it felt like for motherhood for me, was that it was so overwhelming. There was always something that you had to learn. There's always something that you had to do. And it felt like there were so many rules. And I just wanted to break them all, it felt like. So 3rd, right, what I would do differently is try to have them on a little bit of a sleep schedule, sleep train, at least where they could just sleep through the night, even if it's like 6 hours. I did not sleep with Penny at all, and that was like the worst thing ever. I swear to you, I think it was because she was addicted to the boob, or I don't know if it was because, like, that was the hard part about breastfeeding, is that you never knew how much you were giving your kid. Like they would say like, oh, like she would just be on it for like 5 minutes. I'm like, okay. Like I try to put her back on there, she's done. I'm like, okay, did you like eat like 10 minutes? Like, I don't know. I didn't know if my kid got enough. I think that's for pumping too. And obviously like formula feeding, like you know exactly how much you're giving your kid, which is super cool. So the 4th thing that I would do differently is screen time. And that's a hot topic. I I'm not against screen time. I think it's really cool. I mean, we are a Miss Rachel fanatic. Like, I freaking love Miss Rachel. Um, that was really, really helpful for me. However, Penny to me is like so smart. Like, she talked really early. She would communicate really well with me at a young age. She would memorize melodies so fast. Like, she was just incredibly smart to me. However, there was a period where I felt like I would just give her like a YouTube, my phone on YouTube, because I was like so overstimulated and so overwhelmed that I was doing too much, that I wasn't dealing with the consequences of what a toddler or like like a kid, how a kid should act. Like, it was just easier for me to give her the phone rather than dealing with it. And don't get me wrong, I understand. Like, I don't think that it's always that easy. I really don't. When my grandma was sick in the hospital, Penny would do so good with all her toys, all her color pencils, everything, until a doctor came in to try to talk to me. She would just start screaming. She did not like like me getting, like, talking to somebody else. She wanted to be in the mix, and I would just hand her off the phone. I would just hand her off the phone and be like, here. And obviously, I know it's like a really rough situation because I was under an immense amount of stress with my grandma in the hospital. So I was doing what was easier for me and for me to understand at the time, but I felt like that wasn't the only time that I've done it, right? Where I've been under stress and I've given in to her. I don't know, even like in the car, like I would give her like, oh, watch Miss Rachel's, no crying, you know, like, listen to this. And I didn't know that, like, oh, I could play kid music in the car and like that'll help her soothe her. Like, let me play her favorite kid music. Like, I would just give her the phone. Like, it was the biggest clutch. I would go through periods of like no screen time, none of this. Like, I didn't like it after a while. Like, it just kind of makes me sick. And it's still, even Penny's 2 years and 7 months, I haven't done any YouTube. I don't like YouTube. We switched to Disney Plus, and I'm not saying that's any better, but we kind of changed like her routine around where, you know, you don't just put on a show in the morning, you know, like, that's not how it works. Now I allow Penny to be more involved in my life. Like, even if it's watching me like cut her strawberries in the morning, like, she'll be more involved in what I'm doing. And if it's like baking or making pancakes for her, I let her mix. I let her do whatever, you know. I know they say you're not supposed to let a kid crack an egg because salmonella or something like that. I just try to encourage her to be a part of what I'm doing every single day, and that's really helped because she's very interested in it. And the thing about Penny too is that she likes watching like stuff on the TV, like a movie. Like, she's so into Disney now, right? But she doesn't even stay to watch the movie. Like, she doesn't even, like, she likes it, but she gets so bored that like she ends up playing with her toys. So I know that she much rather preferred to play rather than watch TV. Because at any given time, if I'm like, hey, do you want to go play with me? Or do you want to go outside? She will not choose TV over going outside. She will not choose TV over going, over playing. So I love that, but I feel like at one point it got really scary that I was like, that's all she wanted to do was just watch. And it freaked me out. So for the boys, I don't think I would start them so young. I was home a lot, right? But like, I was also working from home and trying to do a whole bunch of stuff. Like, and I was very involved, but I also felt like I used it as a clutch when I was tired. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm not against like TV or like movies and stuff like that. I just don't want it to be a clutch for me. I don't want to depend on it so heavily that it interferes with the way that my child behaves, or that she's so dependent on it, right? In the car ride, like, now she can go into a car and she could just sing songs. I love that. We're working on her. We haven't gone to restaurants in a really long time because we're trying to save money, trying to draw and stuff like that at the restaurants and not be so dependent on trying to watch something, and be more involved in like us communicating. What else would I do differently as a second time mom? I don't know. I was very strict on like food and stuff like that, and her having like no sugar. And I don't think she had a lollipop until she became 2, which was really cool. I love that. I'm still strict on food. I don't think she should have soda. I don't think the boys should have any of that stuff. Like, they say like after your second, you get loosened up, but I'm still not like that with Penny. Like, I know I eat hot Cheetos. I don't have a little Debbie snack. But listen, I already grew up that way, girl. You don't have to. And the last thing that I would do is not be afraid to ask for help. And that was from everybody. I think part of the reason why I not suffered so much, I'm telling you, motherhood was like a cloud to me. When people would ask me, like, is there anything that you need me to do? Or is this, what can I do for you? Like, I'd be like, nothing, nothing, nothing. I grew up very like, my mom was a single mom, very independent. So I became a very independent girl. I made my own money. I didn't need a man for anything. Like, I was very much like, not in a bad way. Like, I wanted the love, you know, that a man could give me, which my husband does. But like, I didn't need a man financially. I didn't need a man for really anything. Like, I could do everything. I could do everything myself. Like, I felt like, you know. So I felt that way even with like people, like asking people for favors. Like, I didn't want to ask anybody for anything. When people would ask me, like, is there anything that I can do for you? Like, is there anything that I can do? I'm like, no. And like, my dishes weren't done. Let's say I did have like a little bit of pumped milk in the freezer. I would be too like embarrassed to ask them, like, can you just watch my daughter while I go to sleep? No, like, I felt guilty. I felt like if it wasn't for a doctor's appointment or something serious, then I don't need to be asking for a babysitter or anybody to watch Penny. Kenny's dad helped me a lot that first year, but that's because Kenny would always call him. I'd be like telling Kenny that I'm not doing good, I'm not okay. So he would call his dad, and his dad would just show up. He's like, hey, can you let me know, you know, things aren't okay? Like, how can I help you? I'm like, oh. And then it was just like, it wouldn't overwhelm me, but I think, I don't know. It was just hard for me to accept help, man. It was so hard for me. I don't know. It's like this independent girl. I think as a mom, as a first-time mom, it made me feel like this is the first thing that I couldn't control by myself. This was the first time in my life where I had no control over how I was feeling. I would even feel guilty being like I would never ask, like, can you just watch her while I go to the gym or while I go get a pedicure or while I go to this? I didn't want to do that. I felt like that was so selfish of me. And now it's like, now, or even with like, they wanted to clean my house or something. I'm like, no, it's okay. I'll do it. I mean, it was going to get done, but maybe like 2 days later. Recently, Kenny's aunt and uncle, they came over, and as you guys know, I'm pregnant with twins and my back has been killing me. I've been trying to nest and do as much as I can. And they saw that there was dishes in my sink and they said, do you think we can wash these dishes for you? And I said, you know what? Yeah, you can. And it felt so good. I was like, okay. Like, I'm allowing them to help me is what I'm trying to say, is that I want to feel like if people want to help me, I want to let them. And I'm not going to feel guilty about it. I'm not going to feel bad, because I think that's like the best thing you can do, right? If I'm going to need the help, guys. I'm going to have 2 kids at the same time, plus a toddler who's a low-key a little feral right now. And I'm just so thankful that the kids are not coming during football season. So Kenny is going to be here a lot more. I mean, obviously he still has to work, but I just love that he's going to be home by like 2:30, and I'll get to have a husband, right, for the second half of the day, and we can tackle it that way. There's obviously a lot to learn. I'm sure I'm missing some things on what I would do differently. I think I'm just going to give myself grace as well as a second-time mom, not be so hard on myself. You can't really prevent postpartum depression or anxiety, but I would like to set things up, you know, like formula, allowing people to help me. Those things will help me mentally, you know what I mean, where it won't hit me as strong. So I do pray for a better experience as a second-time mom. Granted, I love Penny. She is my girl to the end, okay? We ride at dawn, but it was really hard for me. Man, it was hard. Up until that first year, the moment I stopped breastfeeding, I swear, guys, she was able to sleep through the night, and then now she's just a toddler who's feral. That concludes our chat for the day. However, I did have a question. So I had a question on my Instagram, and it said, oh, is there anything that scares me about motherhood and pregnancy? So yes, I've said this before, I think, but when I was pregnant with Penny, I thought I was gonna die during labor. So I pulled out a life insurance plan, and I made sure that if I was going to pass away during, you know, labor, that I was going to leave Penny something behind, because I didn't want her to come into this world, I don't know, to nothing. Like, I wanted her to have a good life, so I pulled out a life insurance policy for her, and I was, I guess, scared to death. What scares me about motherhood, I know it's deep and it's sad, and we're all going to experience it one day, but yeah, it's death and leaving too early, right? Not being able to, oh my god, I'm gonna start crying, I have this mask on. Yeah, why am I such a crybaby? I'm hormonal, I have 2 kids inside me. Yeah, just like leaving too soon, you know, like not being able to experience that. But you know, that was a really bad thought in my head a lot. Like, my anxiety was up the roof, guys. My postpartum anxiety, I thought that every time I got into a car, granted, I got in like 5 car accidents. I'm gonna give you guys my car experience on another podcast. I would think that every time I'd get in a car with Penny, I was gonna get in a car accident. And even, I have like anxiety in the back of my head about anybody like driving with Penny. Like, I get so worried. I don't know, Penny hasn't been into many people's cars without me in it, but I feel really scared when somebody, you know, like if somebody has to watch them, like, oh, is it okay if I take her with me to this? And I'm just like, no, it's okay, I'll just stay behind. It's just death, but I don't think about it often though. I don't think like that. Like it doesn't, it's not something that keeps me up at night anymore. I like really have learned to appreciate my time here with whatever God gives me, right? But what scares me about pregnancy? So right now, currently, this pregnancy, the twins, what is scaring me and what freaks me out every week, because I'm high risk with the identical twins, and I have to go to the doctors once a week, which is great that they monitor me. It's great. However, I feel, not that I feel, but every week something has happened to where they're telling me bad news, right? That one baby's getting too much fluid. I might have gestational diabetes. My membrane broke. Like, all these things, and it just scares me. It just scares me that, not that they're going to be NICU babies, because I know we have the technology and things can go right in so many ways. I remember, like, I don't Google search things as much, because I mean, Google's going to tell you the worst things. And I remember I Googled something like, what would happen if a baby got too much fluid? And one of the answers was like, possible like end of life. And I was like, okay, I need to get out of here. I need to get out of here. Like, obviously it's like the worst possible thing to happen, but of just them coming too early, you know what I mean? And like them having to be in the NICU, you know, for months. Like, I don't know. I feel bad saying that, because there are so many people that go through that. I mean, I know personal people who have gone through that with their twins, and a lot of people have. So I don't know. I feel bad saying that, but it is this. I don't know. I feel bad saying that, but it's a true fear, right? That your babies could be, you know, they won't be coming home with you when you're going into labor, right? That they might be staying at the hospital. What scares me is, like, now knowing that I have 2 babies and I'm high risk, that if that did happen, like, what happens with like Penny, or how long will I be in the hospital without her? I feel bad, because I have another baby at home and who I feel still very much needs us. So those are some things that have crept up on my anxieties. Well, guys, thank you guys for joining me. I really appreciate this talk, and I kind of like doing it at night. It's so quiet. Penny and Kenny are asleep. Might do this more often. Next week's episode is going to be a very touchy subject for a lot of people who are dog owners, but it's going to be, I will never get another dog for as long as I have children. I don't know if that's like the exact topic, but you get the vibe. I have a lot to say. Okay, see you guys next week. Thanks for chatting with Jax.